You're listening to Some Like It Hot on Sun FM 91.3 VY Sonoma. This is our guest, Scott Ebright. He does a lot of fascinating, fabulous things. Let's see if that's working.
Boy, I heard a breath there like it was a horror movie.
There you go.
Okay, yeah. Coming through loud and clear.
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
10-4.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
10-4, good buddy. So we have Scott Ebright of Ebright Entertainment Enterprises. And Scott, you do murder mystery dinner parties, and you know, I hope you'll share a lot about that, because I just find it so fascinating. I've been a part of one before, and it was so much fun. But how long have you been involved, and how'd you get involved?
Basically, I needed to pay the bill. So let's go back about 15 years, and it seems like about every 8 to 12 years I've had to change my career for one thing or another. The market got too inflated. Boy, at one point, bands were in high demand, early 70s, mid 70s. Then everybody, it was, it was as common as a truck driver. Everybody was a musician, everybody was gigging, and the more gigs and bands there were, the less money you got paid. So I always tried to immediately look around at what the whole market was doing, then I immediately went out and didn't do it. I came up with the first in the 70s. It was like the first tribute to Elvis. We put it in Vegas, and then we had a 50s group. When everybody else looked like the Doobie Brothers in the mid-70s, my band, Cruisin', was playing all over the Bay Area with cut-off hair and greasy leather jackets doing oldies music.
Wow. I think I remember them.
And they did a Beach Boys set, and so that was fine, and then while it lasted, then I kind of saw the light at the end of the tunnel on live music in general, so I became, I'm always proud of it, I was one of the first 3 DJs ever in the Bay Area who actually attempted to do a 4-hour wedding with not a band, but get this concept, 2 record players in vinyl discs. It was the scourge of the century, because when we came out on the Union Square at the end of the night, we were being thrown rotten fruits and tomatoes from the Musicians Union.
Oh, my God.
And Channel 5 and Channel 4 were there filming this drastic new renegade that was trying to run against all the face of the musicians. And I was still holding a union card as a drummer, so figure that out. So to answer your question, I was always having to reinvent myself to stay afloat and make the next new big innovative switch. And therefore, I was kind of getting sick of doing corporate opening nightclubs around the country and being just a DJ. And then finally, team building became a new innovative concept for corporations, which also had an endless bottom to that well of money. No more public tickets or, not getting paid enough for shows. Every time you get hired by corporations, it's a guaranteed gig.
Right.
So therefore, by doing team building, we just filled the demand that they had. And more often, we were getting requests to do murder mystery shows. And I hired a couple, and they weren't real good. And I thought, no, what do we do? And then somebody said, well, write your own if you think they're no good. And that's how it all started.
That's smart. And then, of course, now I've talked to you a few times over the past few months, and you do have a fabulous imagination. And, I mean, you can just, I can see where the writing could just flow, and you could create probably, a dozen scripts in a month almost with your imagination.
If I could do that, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in Paris or something, living off the fruits of my labor. No, it's tremendous labor intensive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no computer program exists where it'll fill in all the little domino effects. It's like a house of cards. Every little chip, every little piece of strategic evidence and clues have to fit together perfectly. And if you change one thing about a character's nuance or attitude, it may affect the script throughout for the other characters as well as the plot. So it does take, I actually predict it takes about 6 months of doing a show a dozen times till I've got it about at an 85% satisfactory level. And then we just tweak it through the years and put in fun new stuff. Some of our audiences come up with great ad-libs that are worth stealing and putting in the show. Yes.
This sounds like fun.
I know.
Have you done this?
Yeah, it was fun. I was written into a script as Marilyn Merlot. Yeah.
Let me guess. Were you dressed rather provocatively and sensuously? And
pretty clever.
Okay.
Like Marilyn Monroe.
Yes.
But it was Marilyn Merlot.
Okay.
Yes, in red. So, of course, I wore red. And now, you don't only write, but you also act in these too.
Yeah, I direct the plays, but the dirty little secret, and I'll go ahead and admit it, once we've learned the play, we never rehearse. Once we know the lines.
Right, once you know it.
It's better to keep it fresh, and we leave a little room for spontaneity. But here's a misnomer. The great majority of murder mystery companies, a lot of them like to kind of advertise the fact that they don't like a script because therefore they want that element of surprise and ad-libability. And they don't want to get in the genre of being kind of, what would you call it, just predictable, or a rigid script. But my logic on that is if you're using great actors, which I use from the film and TV industry, they'll do the play every time like it's the first time they've ever done it, and it's fresh and it's believable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my comeback for anyone else that would suggest, well, you shouldn't use such a rigid script. Well, I want to control the flow of the audience laughs. Our plays are a balance of seriousness and humor. And me as kind of like the facilitator, as the cop, as the homicide detective, I have to make sure we're getting enough exposure to both of those elements. Yeah. If it gets a little too serious and bogged down, I'll see eyes starting to glaze over.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that when Scott walked in here, he had a badge around his neck, and I asked him what department he was with.
Yeah, San Francisco Police Homicide.
SFPD?
Yeah.
We thought you were going to shut us down here for a moment because we had a spider in the building, and we've got some pretty strict FCC rules, and I don't know if they allow spiders.
Well, it sent your 4 guys running out the door that saw me coming in. They were carrying boxes, and they didn't know what to do. So
and we know what was in those.
Okay. So they squealed out of the parking lot.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And so now you're over in San Jose, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I have offices in 3 locations, San Francisco, San Jose, and Hayward. Ironically, it's turning out logistically that it's more convenient for me a lot of times to operate a warehouse out of Hayward because I'm midway between all the points of the Bay Area. And plus, it's such a beautiful town.
Oh, yeah.
Especially San Leandro. Yeah.
I hope the mayor of Hayward's listening, too. But at any rate, with the downsizing and recession and everything that's at hand, I thought, I was paying premium in Foster City, for warehouse space, so it made sense to kind of do that. But it's amazing, even in this day and age, people will call only an area code that's within 3 miles of their home. Mm-hmm. They'll go to the grocery store and trust that a truck full of bread arrived at Safeway, that day when they shop, but they don't dare trust somebody that has to drive from 20 miles away to do a show. I just don't get the logic
isn't that weird?
Why they can't branch out and hire people from all over the Bay Area.
Right.
As well they should.
So that's why I have 3 different numbers that kind of help encompass them.
Okay. I see the trick there. Mm-hmm. Pretty clever. So how big of a cast do you have that you can pull from? Are you always looking for new people to bring into your lineup?
Yeah, it always seems to happen gradually and naturally. At the peak when we were running up to 3 years ago, I had to have about 18 to 20 actresses and actors. Now I'm able to rotate constantly between 9 to 13 or so.
Oh, that's good.
And what's good is I have 3 or 4 deep on each of the roles and characters. So I'll send out a casting call. And to keep these people happy so they can still pursue their film and TV careers, I don't even book a show for the actors until 11 or 10 days in advance. Mm-hmm. So, because otherwise, if I did it 2 months in advance, I'd be getting a phone call 3 days away. Oh, Scott, I'm sorry, I got a film deal. I got to take it. And I don't want to run into that kind of conflict. So it's a great deal for them because they can be booked at the last minute and be happy that they're available and they can do it.
Exactly. Are you able to give us maybe a little scenario of one or 2 of your scripts without giving it all away? Maybe just a theme or. Sure.
In fact, because I'll just say it, 100% of our shows are all involved around a dinner scene. Mm-hmm. It's the throwback to the dinner theater of the 20s through the 40s, and it's kind of a unique novelty. So what we do is we always have people arrive for cocktails or refreshments. I always ask my clients, will your guest be lubricated prior to the show? And I get some quizzical reactions when I say that sometimes. And sometimes I have to elaborate and explain what I really meant. And then prior to the dinner, 5 minutes prior, we always have a dead body discovered. Screams, dead body. Right. And technically that's my grand entrance. Finally, I show up as the cop. And then I announce
to save the day.
Yes. Flash the bag, act like I've been around the block a few thousand times. And So they always say 2 announcements. Well, first, folks, how could we ever apologize for this terrible thing that's just happened tonight? I mean, who would have known? But meanwhile, we just got the news that dinner's about to be served, so take a seat and bon appetit. So they all start laughing. Yeah. And then...
Don't mind the dead body.
Yeah. And then from that point, the play begins, and all the plays have that same structure, but the theme is different from play to play. Like you were just playing Edith with her French tune earlier. Our Murder in the Louvre starts off with sidewalk cafe sounds and accordion sounds, light jazz in French, the language, and that puts everybody in the mood for Murder in the Louvre.
Gotcha.
So we pretend we're actually in the banquet room, the Scully room at the Louvre Museum. Our clients usually go overboard to put up little centerpieces of like Eiffel Towers and things like that. And our characters are just a hoot, the ones that are in that play.
Right, it sounds like it. Well, most of my life I've been playing characters like, the Madonnas, the Mae West, the Marilyn Monroes, all the blondes. And I think it would be fun, really fun, for a change. Just like throwing off a name at the top of my head, like Andy Rooney. If somebody were to, this is what I'm saying, which would be so funny, is to something completely that if you were to give me a name tag that said Andy Rooney, it's like, oh, dear Lord, how could I do that? But it would be fun to think that, why is it that everybody here has bushy eyebrows?
See?
So is this transgender thing a basic pursuit that you'd like to follow? No, I think I know what you're saying, because
I want to be so different from what I've been doing for so many years. Yeah.
Well, you would find in my plays what I like about it. I have never. In fact, I don't even want to see a TV show or a movie for weeks before I write a new script, because I'm glad to say that after I've written all my shows, there's not one that even remotely reminds me of something that's ever been written in a movie.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's why people at these plays cannot figure out where it's going next. And even I don't. I like to stump myself while I'm writing the script.
That's funny.
And I don't even know who's guilty every time we do the play. It's one of the 4 or 5 people, because I've written it in such a way that there's going to be 4 or 5 arrest warrants at the end, and I'm only going to pull one out. So even I don't know through the whole play who we're building up to be guilty.
So you watch a lot of CSI?
Sometimes, yeah, they're all pretty formula and predictable. I like 48 Hours. It's got a lot of reality in it.
A mystery,
Yeah, I love studying a face that's lying.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Now,
that's always fun.
And I've always watched those Agatha Christie murder mysteries, and they were so much fun, because I'd love to try and figure out who done it. They were the who done it type of murder mysteries, and half the time I was always wrong, but of course then they do this incredible twist. I love the twists and the turns in these murder mysteries that people put together.
Yeah, and I have a true confession to make. I cannot for the life of me follow any of her mysteries, any of the movies done about her mysteries, even the famous Clue movie that was done, and with all those famous characters in the movie, Martin Mull and all these different guys. I couldn't follow it because there's too many twists and too many. What I have learned, and to
make it simple.
Keep it simple. Mm-hmm. How many people remember after a 1-hour lecture more than 3 simple points?
Right.
Nobody. And so if you start getting too deep, and we assign pens and detective reports for everyone, but quite literally they can't possibly keep track of all these myriad of ideas and directions. So I want mine to be bonehead simple, yet it's still, I find it's even too complex for most audiences.
Murder mystery dinner theater for dummies.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that one this weekend. We've got 10 little 9-year-old girls in a private home party. And I looked at mine, and it's a pajama party later. So I'm just hoping they save the shenanigans and the screaming till after we leave. But anyway, it's going to be funny because we're literally purposely simplifying, oversimplifying. I don't even know if reading the evidence reports they're going to know how to pronounce half the words.
That's a good point.
That will be interesting. Well, I also saw, I think it was like around Halloween time when the girls next door used to live at the mansion with Hef in the good old days. But and they did a murder mystery around Halloween. Did you see that?
That was my gig.
That's what I was going to say. I remember we were talking about that.
Yeah, let me finish it. It was my gig because what was her name?
Oh gosh, not Brittany.
Blonde.
Kendra?
How can I forget? No, not Kendra. The one who went to college and got her degrees. Anyway, she called me and was talking about it for 2 weeks. And just on her little phone in her bedroom, but I didn't know anything about who they were or what it was. Finally, by the second phone call, she said, well, we live at Hef's Mansion. And I thought, and she goes, we have a nice show on TV. You ought to tune into it sometime and see. I said, well, okay, but, it really wasn't my thing.
Bridget is her name.
That's it, Bridget.
Right, Holly, Bridget, and
Holly.
And when they finally settled, the film crew and everything, on the day they finally settled on it, changed within a 3 days' notice, and I had an overnight obligation at Lake Tahoe at Heavenly Valley up on the top to do a major event from a company out of L.A., a medical association, and there's no way I could change.
Right.
And their thing was filming starting the next day at 9 in the morning. No jets are going to take in the middle of winter to go down and film, and so I had to pass on it. So some other company did it.
And I saw it.
Yeah.
It was fun, but I think yours would have been more fun.
Yeah, I don't have people running around the yard picking up a sheet of notebook paper next to a tree. I mean, that's not, that's
it was
a clue.
more like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah,
is what
that's
they
what
were
I
being
mean.
sent on.
That's what I mean. And my favorite part of that whole one is when one of the actors from that company leaned over to Bridget and said, so are you following what's happening? And she smiled. She goes, not really. And I just cheered and said, yes, because that's precisely it. It wasn't.
It has to be
weird.
User-friendly, blonde-friendly, especially if it's going to be in a Hef's Mansion.
Yeah, and everybody, here's the secret. For all my plays, unlike all the restaurant and kind of hotel plays, we never do a public show. And we have to have everyone in the same room. But what makes it effective is everyone is exposed to all the evidence at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So there's no cheating where two couples in the back of the house might have overheard something that no one else heard.
Right.
So at the end, if that puts it over the top to announce why who and so is guilty, well, then the other 98% of the people go, well, I would have said that too if you'd only given me those clues.
Right.
Sure.
So everyone leaves feeling cheated.
Oh,
At my plays, they all leave knowing they were given an equal shot. And they were still dumb.
Yeah. Hey, now, a lot of these murder mystery groups will give prizes at the end. Do you also do that for the winners who had the most clues?
Some groups we do it for, but that's something that's not going to come out of my budget because we have a pretty strict budget. So I've actually done them where one company a couple of years ago, I mean, boy, I wish I'd seen this coming. They literally gave me their credit card and said, we forgot to get the prizes. Go to a couple local video stores and get a bunch of movies to give away in things on DVD. And I went, okay, what's the limit? And she said, I don't know, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. I went, okay. And for a room full of 40 people.
Wow.
So I went out and got all the stuff.
Wow, how fun. And so how far do you travel? I mean, are you willing to go almost anywhere, or is there a certain limit? Because, you got to get your troupe on a plane, I guess.
My most convenient show, I've been in Florida, Illinois, a lot of stuff in Michigan, Indiana, mostly Northern California, Arizona, and Nevada. For the traveling shows, like I work with Johnny Depp and Paris Hilton and Sean Connery, the world's leading impersonators.
Yeah, they're great.
So that's an upgrade. So if I go with them, one guy flies out of Phoenix and we'll both meet at the same airport. Well, I can hire a couple local actors in the big cities, like Chicago or Miami or someplace, and we'll do advanced rehearsals over the phone or through Skype or something. But we travel all over quite seriously. You can hire local outfits all around the country. So the demand for long distances has waned over the period of time, and now we're just content to do stuff within 2 hours, every direction.
Right. Have you ever been to a murder mystery dinner theater?
I've never been. I've always wanted to. That sounds fascinating.
They vary a lot, and they vary as much as there are such things as good and bad DJs. So you're kind of shooting in the dark. And there's a little exception to the rule. We're lucky in Northern California we can cash in on a thing called the tourist trade.
Oh, yeah.
So your reputation isn't necessarily the only thing that's going to carry the weight of the show. Let's say, just for the worst example, if you had sort of a flop one night and it didn't go over very well.
Well, now, what type of music do you play, when you're doing your show?
We do general background, a little bit of mixture that appeals to baby boomers or Generation Xers or a little bit of Lost Generation type music, but it's quality background like you would hear at any wedding or nightclub or hotel. But during the actual play, my favorite thing is I've pre-edited some little 10 to 14 second music drops which are suspenseful. And then somebody reads the evidence and there were no fingerprints on the knife. However, blood is being currently tested for DNA. And suddenly I push the button and then it fades out.
Oh, yeah.
And because I got so sick of people in the audience going, da, 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 da. Yeah. And so instead of hearing them do that, I actually, one night I waited until someone did that. They went, da, 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 da. Then I punched the button and went, bum, 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 bum. And then everybody roared and applauded like I really showed them up, you know.
That's good.
But we have music drops, and that keeps people on their toes and keeps them alert and awake and entertained. And it really does help the show, especially the dramatic arrest scene at the end. This music just sounds, you know, it's overwhelming. It's so good.
I love it. Well, we have Scott Ebright here from Ebright Entertainment Enterprises, and you can find his murder mystery dinner parties online at murderproductions.com.
And I might add that out of all the Marylands anyone could pick in Northern California, you are the most talked about, most frequently picked one. I've always heard that. Yeah.
Thank you ever so.
Yeah, I've been just looking for an excuse to hire you just so I can see you wearing your outfit for a couple hours.
Ooh, can you feel the breeze from the subway? Isn't it just delicious?
Yeah, I think I'll take that breeze home with me, too, if you don't mind.
Hey, you would be a good W.C. Fields or a Groucho Marx. Yes, I can see that.
You would totally.
You know, they do, especially W.C. and Groucho Marx. I mean, I'm not going to say Charlie Chaplin.
Yes.
Charlie Chaplin had great
sure.
one-liners because he never spoke.
Yeah, exactly.
But even with Mae West and her, it's talking about, you know, the pearl necklaces. I mean, I believe she had a line about, they would say, you know, where did you get those diamonds? Or those are my summer diamonds, and some are and some aren't.
And that's 510-470-3142.
Okay, 510-470-3142. Scott Ebright with his murder mystery dinner parties.
Yes.
Well, I am loving this, and this is so fun having you come on and share about your productions, and I hope that I can at some point, you know, it will work out where I can be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why you're listening to Some Like It Hot on Sun FM 91.3 KSVY Sonoma. We're streaming live 24/7 at sonomasunfm.com, and you can find me on Facebook at Some Like It Hot Radio Show, hosted by Diana Dawn, to find out every week who's coming on and leave your comments and suggestions. And we've only got a couple minutes left, so we're probably just going to have time to round off the show by thanking Scott Ebright by coming on. Is there any last words you'd like to share?
You know, you could always cue up my exit music. It's a general police siren as I walk out of a building. No, I'm just teasing. I live and die for that thing. It's just these things are a lot of fun, and they're different than the most types that you would see in restaurants and hotels, because the actors I use are second to none. That's what puts it over the top.
That's what puts it over the top.
They've got a lot of good spirit and good energy.
So when they're good, they're good, and when they're bad, they're even better.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do that all together. When they're good, they're good, and when they're bad, they're even better. Oh, come up and see us sometime at KSVY or Sonoma Sun FM.